Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, we are responding to FindFoodFreedom. I wanted to look at more of her page. I kind of dug really far back. This is from April of 2023. But I honestly really hated this one. And I want to go ahead and respond to it. I'm not going to play the whole thing through this time because it's a little too long. It's like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So it's a little too long for me to do that. So we're going to take it piece by piece. Okay. But basically the comment on the screen says, is it normal to have the opposite happen? Now that I let myself eat whatever, I eat a lot every day and night. It's never enough. It's been about 3 years. So what I will say in response to this comment, based upon my experience with severe issues, very, very severe, and this is also scientific, your body can store about 6 months of nutrition, typically. So even if you are in a phase where you're not eating enough or you're not eating enough variety, your body can typically last around 6 months without having an issue. Okay. Typically, this is a typical person. So I would state if you're having any physical issue where you're having a very, very high appetite post a diet that is too much, it should not last over 6 months because at that point, it's no longer physical. Because it's that same, it can maybe take just as long to rebuild the stores, but once the stores are there, your natural appetite will go down, unless if you have some other type of hormonal issue. But in most cases, you may have a mental health issue, which that would not be solved by intuitive eating, in my opinion. That's my opinion. So take my opinion for what it is. I'm just offering my perspective. So let's go ahead and listen to what she says to this.
So this is a part 2, but it really should be more of like a part 1. But I just went back and watched part 1 and I'm like, I really wish I would have started here. So let's do it. This person is saying, I let myself eat whatever I want every day, every night. And I find that it's never enough. It's been 3 years of this. So this is where I would like to start. How many years before this point did you spend dieting, restricting, following a meal plan, counting calories, cutting out, macros or portions or whatever, all of the diet stuff? That is really important information because that many years of dieting, however many it was, that's how many years you were restricting. And we know that
So this does not at all work for somebody with toxic ritualistic behavior and on the side of eating too much. So I often come at these videos from the eating too much category. This is not true. You typically have not been dieting that consistently. Obviously, you typically have not been in restriction. Maybe with certain nutrients, that can be the case. But like I said, those high cravings for those nutrients, like let's say you went keto, your craving for carb would not last past 6 months on a physical level. Let's say you went vegan. Your craving for meat would not last past 6 months. It would probably actually be a lot less time. For a typical person who's not extremely severe, it would probably take maybe a month tops for you to get whatever nutrient you are lacking. Your body will store it. It'll be done. It's over on a physical level. The physical side, oftentimes in these ways, can be a lot shorter in duration to fix than the mental side. The mental side, it can take years. For me, I had physical issues in 2020. I've talked about a lot on the channel. I started changing my diet to help support my thyroid in March of 2021. By September, my appetite went down. I was no longer restricting macros or anything like that. I was eating what I felt my body needed on a macronutrient level. I did have some boundaries for thyroid health, which I will get into that probably in a different video or I've talked about it on many of my other videos. It's not really relevant. The point is, though, the appetite did come down on a physical level because I really did keto a lot. And so I would have phases where I'd need to eat massive amounts of carbs from those spells of being keto. It was not the right diet for me whatsoever. And so I would have massive carb cravings after. But like I said, when I finally stopped the cycle and I stopped going back to eating keto, my massive appetite for carbs went away within 6 months. However, the scars from the toxic ritualistic behavior, I have not had an emotional or anxiety induced since October of 2020. And even almost 4 years out, it'll be 4 years in October, I still am dealing with mental scars as well as some physical issues from my time. So with the mental side, it can be even longer. The physical side, it's been improving the whole time. The mental side has been very challenging this year. And that's 4 years after, because there's so much that goes into it, from identity to body image to dynamics with other people, social relationships shifting. All these different things are triggers. It's typically a lot more difficult on the mental side for somebody that struggles with this. And I would say, I don't know how long the scars will last. I know that they are deep, they are purple. They're healed, but they're tender. And that's the truth. So in a lot of ways today, I feel like I'm better physically than mentally, which is very strange because I had the opposite for a lot of years. Throughout 2020, 2021, 2023, 2022, like those years I was a lot worse physically. So I think what upsets me is she's not going to acknowledge the difference between the two sides. She's not. Let's see.
As an intuitive eating counselor, in our paradigm, that where restriction is present, binging will always follow. So if you dieted for
but also it's a cycle. So where within that thing, when you're eating a lot in an anxiety-induced state, dieting always follows too. Because I don't know if she doesn't have any experience with it, if she doesn't understand it. I think because she lives on an alternate planet where like health concerns with overeating are not a thing in her mind. But typically a person knows you do not feel good while you're doing this. And when it gets to be like super morbid obesity and you start to develop a lot of things like hypothyroidism, it's very common within this disorder. Super, super common because you're messing with your metabolism, you're messing with things. So it can cause some physical health issues when you're doing that. When you start having these comorbidities and all these different problems, it can be incredibly scary when you start to experience health effects from what you're doing. And so a diet always follows because there's always an attempt to get control over the situation in an attempt to try to live longer. She's not there. She doesn't think about it. She's in an alternate universe. While I do think that you can pursue health and not lose weight loss for somebody super morbidly obese, it will be a step in the journey. It will be a step in the process. I do think you have to be mentally ready, physically ready. You need to bolster your health before you even start trying, in my opinion. I think it would be a great idea to build muscle. It would be a great idea to, for me, I really needed to boost my thyroid health. I need to stabilize my macronutrients and make sure that I was getting all of them for a while. And I built muscle and I stopped doing the cycle for quite a while before I was able to pursue weight loss sustainably. So it really depends, but it didn't take 3 years to start losing weight. Even for me, I was at probably one of the most severe places you can be. Not the most, I was not like 600 pounds or anything like that, but I was still very, very, very severe. And even for me, when I really was stopping everything, I was able to start losing weight within a year and a half. I think 3 years is too long. I think it's too long. I think it's good to have realistic goals, but I don't think it should take longer, especially longer than 2 years. I just don't. You should make some type of progress throughout that time. My mom is struggling because she also has toxic ritualistic mindsets and behaviors and that kind of stuff. And she's been processing it over probably the past 2 years, but she's getting to a place now where I do think she is able to lose sustainably, or she's starting to get there. But there was still a lot of work that went into these years to break the mindset and all these different things. And the mental side has definitely been addressed, and it has been being addressed throughout these 2 years where she's really started to try. And so I think I'm of two minds about it, where yes, it can take multiple years, but to just be eating and 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 eating for 3 years, I think that's horrible. I think it is atrocious to act like that's totally fine. It's not fine. It's not. What if somebody's gaining and gaining and gaining and gaining for 3 years? You're like, that's okay. I guess to her it is. Crazy.
5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years, what you're doing is you're picking up a bow and arrow and you're saying no food, no food, no food, no food, whatever that food is, right? So like on a keto diet, no carbs, no carbs, no carbs, you're restricting, and then you hit a breaking point and that arrow flies so much further in the other direction.
That can work on a physical level. That can be true. But it doesn't last for 3 years. I'm sorry. It doesn't. That's way too long. Your body is good at storing nutrition. Your body is good at doing that stuff. I guarantee you this person is still doing this for 3 years because of mental issues, and she's not separating the two at all. She sees it as exactly the same, and it's not exactly the same, because physically you will reach satiety. You will reach a point where you get full. But mentally, if you are not right, then you will still continue to eat. It doesn't matter. And she doesn't understand that. She doesn't know what she's talking about. It's not about being full. It's a response to anxiety. Anxiety can last and last and last. Anxiety can come from anything at any time. It can happen all the time. You can get anxiety because you're bored. But you're not going to get hungry because you're bored. You're not going to have a physical hunger because you're bored. That's not real. There's a huge difference. I tell you guys all the time, do not eat because of anxiety. It is dangerous because it can never end. There's no limit to it. It can go on and on and on and on and on. And like I said, I rode that almost to death. There's a huge difference. And she's not acknowledging that whatsoever. If you are hungry, you need to eat. I will be the first one to tell you that. If your hunger, even in a deficit, in my opinion, if your hunger is above a 4 or at a 4, you need to eat something. You probably just need a snack or something. Nothing drastic. But you need to eat something. You can't just starve forever. That's not sustainable. You might need to eat more for a while. You might need to plateau for a bit or stop losing for a couple months. But that doesn't mean you need to just gain and gain and gain. That's not true. I do think we have to get rid of the biggest loser mindset, but we don't have to go to the biggest gainer mindset instead. And I feel like that's what she's giving.
And we binge on everything in sight. What I'm trying to say is it's actually really, really, really normal to binge, have a celebratory binge phase, or some people call it the honeymoon phase in the intuitive eating, where you feel so out of control.
This is horrible. It is not normal. She's disgusting to me when she says that. It is absolutely not normal. Imagine if somebody, I don't even think I can say this on YouTube, but imagine if somebody said, it's totally normal to just not want to eat at all for days on end. It's totally normal. It's not normal. It's not. Now, there's a difference if you can't. Say you can't afford food or something. That's very different, right? But if you're just choosing not to, and it's for some anxiety reason, or it's for some emotional or mental health issue, that's not normal. There's differences in different contexts. It's very different to eat a lot on Christmas versus eating a lot because you're bored. It's very different. Why? Because Christmas ends. It's self-limiting. That's why. I told you guys last year when I was going to go see the Eras Tour for Halloween, I was like, I'm going to eat whatever I want when I go. Why? Because it was Halloween. And guess what? The clock struck midnight and it was November 1st and it was done, which meant it was done. You're not going to have serious health issues from eating a lot once in a while. But that's not toxic ritualistic behavior. Because guess what? If I choose to eat due to anxiety, it can go on forever. There is no limit. None at all. None at all.
Food. You feel like it's never good enough because even though 3 years feels like a really long amount of time, if you've been dieting for 20 years, you've been physically and mentally restricting and not allowing yourself to eat food.
They're two very different things. It's so different. And I don't even think mental restriction is even real. Like, that's so stupid. What it is it's fixation. It's spiraling. It's obsession. Which again, there's 3 parts of a cycle. 1, 2, 3. We have to say it codedly. There is, I'm going to eat a ton because of my anxiety. There is, I'm going to start this diet because of my anxiety. And there is, I hate my physical form because of my anxiety. Notice what's involved with all 3, your anxiety. Because you would not be able to sustain this without all 3 parts of the cycle, which is why to get rid of it, you attack all 3 parts of the cycle. So you don't stare in the mirror. You don't start unsustainable diets, and you don't eat large amounts of food due to anxiety. You stop all 3 of them, and you fight all 3 of them at the same time. And eventually, the spiral and the cycle of it dies. It withers and dies because you have boundaries in your mind. I have to make sure that I don't stare in the mirror or start down that path, because if I do, it undermines and it starts trying to bring back one part of the cycle. So I still say no because I'm not really struggling with the other sides at all. But that one is trying to come back and I have to say no. That's what it is. What do I do for my anxiety? I do anything else. I bitch and complain. I call friends. I talk about the same thing 20 times. I watch Netflix, murder shows. I knit. I pace. I'd rather scream and cry in the middle of the night by myself than go back to that cycle. It does not matter. It doesn't matter. I'd rather fixate on my car. There's 5 million things wrong with my car. I don't know. Maybe. I don't care. Put it onto something else. Something else. Because worrying about my car isn't going to kill me. Screaming in the middle of the night isn't going to kill me. I'm not doing that anymore. Oh my God. I had some post-breakup howling at the moon, as Taylor would say. If you know that song, The Prophecy. I had some of that post-breakup. But I didn't eat. I didn't do the cycle. Because you just find another way to deal with it. If you're anxious about paying your bills, then pay them. If you're anxious about going out in the world, go out in the world, face your fears. If you don't want to think about your emotions, think about them. Defy your anxiety because you have to bring it down. And guess what? If you kill the cycle, then you have to. You have to face your anxiety because you're not going to be able to do, like, you don't have that coping mechanism anymore. So you have to end up dealing with it. I just had to go online and do this whole rigmarole. I had to jump through all these hoops to try to apply for income-based loan repayment or whatever for college. I was anxious about that for months. But last night I was like, you know what? I'm going to put on a freaking Netflix, the worst ex ever about all these like horrible, murderous. I probably shouldn't say that word as much, but I'll put it on and I'll watch all that on Netflix and I'll freaking finish my knitting projects and I will get on the computer and I will figure this out. I didn't eat. That's what people need to understand when they're in this. There's another way. There's always another way. And I will say too, just for my extroverts out there, if you're an extrovert with this problem, your likely biggest trigger is boredom. So you need to find constructive, positive, extroverted experiences to do. You need to find extroverted hobbies. You need to find friends. Don't replace things with bad habits. I'm not saying to go out and drink every night and stuff. I don't think that that's good. You wouldn't want to do that. But you want to go out and do things then because you're an extrovert and you have to. So that's likely one of your biggest triggers. And yes, I'm sorry, extroverts, but there are times when you're going to have to sit and you're going to have to think about your feelings and you're going to have to think about these kinds of things. You don't have to do it alone. I highly suggest therapy for extroverts. I think it's very, very effective, especially for them because they usually have a harder time diving deep. I don't personally need it because I dive deep all the time. I need help getting out more and doing that kind of stuff, which I do. It's part of my recovery is doing the most I can outside of the house. But you find other ways to cope. You find healthy ways of coping. Going for a walk, starting knitting, doing gardening, having a hobby, going to church or something, anything. I think even going to a rage room or something, anything. Even just sitting and crying is better than that. It's better. Because sitting and crying about stuff, it's not going to kill you. And I think people they don't understand that you do this over and over and over again for years and years of your life. And it has to stop eventually. You have to stop. And it doesn't matter. Don't oh gosh, I can't just sit and cry in my room. That's embarrassing. Who cares? Embarrassment isn't going to kill you. You'll get over it. But what she's saying, she's not acknowledging the mental health side at all. She's not acknowledging it. It's horrible.
So when you get exposure and access to all of these foods that you weren't allowed to eat, the fun foods, the play foods, the cake, the pizza, the cookies, the chips, the pretzels, the pasta, all the stuff, you're like, fuck yeah, I want to eat it. And it's never enough because there is that.
It's because you're not dealing with the anxiety. That's why. That's why it will never be enough. But listen to what she says.
red alarm sounding in your head saying, is she going to take it away from me again? Are they going to take it away from me again? Is he going to take it away from me again? Because that restriction is always this lurking fear around the corner. Like, is it going to come back? Am I really...
It's not real when you're eating too much. On that side of it, it's not real. I think it's about acknowledging reality, acknowledging how much you're actually eating. It's about a lot of these things. It's not real. So this isn't helpful. Notice how she's skirting around the anxiety, but she won't say that it's the anxiety. She's going around it. She's talking about anxiety around food. Okay. That can be a part of it. But guess what? You can find something else to be anxious about. And then you just keep eating. If you look for something to be scared of, you will find it. It's a funny thing about the way the brain works, isn't it? If you seek, you will find. Always.
Be allowed to eat whatever I want because I don't know if I believe myself. So that is where I would really want to start. I would love for you to comment below any questions that you have or if you relate to this.
I think that was horrible. I think it was so unhelpful. I think it was awful. But I hope that I could at least try to offer some perspective. Let me know what you guys think. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, night, whatever. Have a good one. Peace. Bye.